ropes, if you will, or seeing how this team is operating, from the sidelines might help him kind of going forward to help get things back on track too.
Maybe so, and we'll get into this more specifically, but you obviously like your chances a whole lot better with Lenora Sellers. There's a reason why he is touted as much as he was in the offseason with Heisman conversations, the first-round picks, and all that kind of stuff. And, again, this is no offense to Luke Doty or Aaron Noland or Cutter Woods. You have a level of drop-off when you go to anybody else in your quarterback room because they're not Lenora Sellers. Not many quarterbacks in the country, when playing at their best, are Lenora Sellers, and that's a compliment to him. Yeah, most definitely. And you look at, everyone's talking about the shift in the Vegas lines, how many points this kid is worth, 7, 10, whatever it may be. There was a big shift in it, and certainly so. You would like to have Lenora Sellers out there because Missouri's a quality opponent, right? Yep. It's not like you're going up there and playing a Mississippi State or an Arkansas right now, which both teams, are on their own trajectories. But yeah, no, you need Lenora Sellers if you want, a more than a fighting chance, or if you want your ultimate advantage. If you're South Carolina, if you don't have them, there is that drop off, and you have to work around it. What does Eli Drinkwitz think about Sellers' opportunity to play this weekend? Cut number 28 here, Dave. This is Eli Drinkwitz yesterday at his presser, weighing in on his thoughts on if Sellers is going to play this weekend.
It's not really for us. It wasn't created for the coaches. It was created for transparency because of other industries that are tied to college football. And so I would say you'd have to ask those guys. Regarding the quarterback situation, Luke Doty's played a quarterback. Another guy that's played a lot of college football. We've played against him before. I remember recruiting Luke out of Myrtle Beach High School when I was at NC State. Really good player, but I don't think their scheme's going to change any. He's not Lenore's, but he's a very good and capable player. So, for us, there's not two stylistic differences in the way that quarterback position is going to be played. So for us, we're going to anticipate that Lenoris will play, and then we'll adjust if he does not.
Now, it's interesting because last year, Brady Cook was a question going into this game against South Carolina. In fact, he was listed as doubtful on the availability report earlier on in the week, and he suited up and was fine. I remember going into that game, we talked a lot about, hey, you might be playing Drew Pine here. Let's see what's going on. And obviously that didn't end up happening, and Brady Cook went out there and had a good game and very nearly led the comeback of Missouri, picking up the win against Carolina with that late touchdown that, before Carolina went down the field and had the Rocket Sanders screen that took in for the score and picking up the victory there. So I do wonder if Eli Drinkwitz says, yeah, I'm probably going to get some gamesmanship back at me for pulling that one last year. Yeah, most definitely. Brady Cook looked fine when he was throwing that deep ball to Luther Burden, late in the fourth quarter. I think, and Brady had a great game respectively. And, I think if Lenoris is any close to fine, right, if there's any, question of playing him, I think, you have to reciprocate the gamesmanship, if you will, to Eli Drinkwitz. And, list him as doubtful and see what happens. And, so I think that also adds to the optimism of the fan base, right? Because you're with a concussion, you really don't know. Like you mentioned, everyone is different, and so I think by playing the doubtful game, it does give the fan base a little bit more hope too. Yeah, and that report will come out a little after 8:00 tonight. And again, there's one that comes out every single day, and then I think the last one's 90 minutes before kickoff coming up on Saturday. So we have all the way until 5:30 Saturday afternoon to really see what Sellers' status is going to be, as long as he's not listed as out, right? Because when you say somebody's out, okay, that's over and done with, and you don't really make the progress from there. But doubtful, questionable, probable, any of those things, there's the optimism of, hey, maybe things can change before this weekend. Again, we don't get to be at practice, so we don't know if he's going to suit up and practice today or not. According to Beamer, that would be obviously their indication on if he's ready to go. Because, again, you got to get ready for the opponent, the installs, and all those kind of things. So there's things you'd be missing in practice that would have you unprepared for this weekend if you just trot it out there on Thursday or Friday when they get to Como or whatever it may be. Today very vital, and we'll see what that report says coming up later on tonight. But, again, you like your chances a whole lot better with a healthy Lenora Sellers going into a tough place like Como this weekend. Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. It's one of the longer road trips that you got to go on, and, you have to be focused against, a good team like Mizzou. They play, typical SEC football. You got to stop the run, be disciplined on defense, and then offensively, you're going to need to do everything you can to score as many points. Their defense is good. They're disciplined. So you're really going to have to play, keyed in, focused football. So we'll have to see how it goes.
knows?
How has Beamer fared in his first SEC road game every single season in his tenure so far? We'll dive into that and also discuss the energy of being on the road and where this team needs to be with all that coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Wednesday on the game. Tyler Ed here for the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder with First Palmetto Bank. If you're looking for a Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder has got you covered. He's helped so many 107.5 Game listeners, and he can help you as well. And when you eat the game, personally recommend him. Owner and operator right here in the Midlands, Jacob has local decision makers, which means quick and precise processing and underwriting. If you're looking to make a move, give Jacob a call at 803-719-1005 or email him at jcrowder@firstpalmetto.com. Interest rates have stabilized as well as the local housing market, and now is a good time to buy a house. And Jacob and First Palmetto Bank have the products to help home buyers. And if you're considering building a home, they have no-nonsense construction loans that fit your needs as well. Again, it's 803-719-1005. Give Jacob a call. His MLS number is 198432. And First Palmetto Bank is a member of FDIC and an equal housing lender. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika from The Walkthrough hanging out with you here on your Wednesday on the game as we inch closer to another weekend full of football. And obviously Carolina's got its big test on the weekend, first road test of the season, I might say there. Cut number 11 here, Dave. This is Coach Beamer talking yesterday with the media about the road energy that he wants to see out of his team going into this weekend's matchup against Missouri.
Yeah, I think if you're a competitor, you embrace going on the road. We've got a young team. We've basically played 3 home games to this point. So we've got a lot of young players on our team that are going to be going into an environment on Saturday night that they've never been a part of in their life. That when Donovan Murph at Irma went and played at Dutch Fork, that was a hostile environment. There's no question about it, but it's not going to be what he's going to face on Saturday night. So the things that we got to fall back on are our fundamentals, our technique, our competitive spirit, that as a competitor you love going on the road and going into other teams' stadium and going in the arena and getting ready and getting the opportunity to compete on the field. And that's what it gets down to. And it's up to us. We know it'll be rocking on Saturday night. We're not going to have to do anything to motivate them because it'll be plenty of energy and electricity in that stadium on Saturday night. I think they're got a blackout going on and all that. And that's, that's awesome. You embrace that. And that's why you love being in the SEC, because I've been in other conferences where you go on the road and there's 20,000 people in the stands and it stinks. That ain't going to be the feeling on Saturday night. And if you're made of the right stuff and are a competitor, you love that and you embrace that.
So in his 4 years here at South Carolina, the first road game in SEC play has not treated Beamer well over the years. Now, albeit 2 of those games were against Georgia in 2022. That was an undefeated Georgia team. In 2023, that team played for the SEC championship and could have very well made the college ball playoff. But you played a 7-6 Arkansas team back in 2022, and the one win that you had was last year when you went on the road in week number 2, and you beat what ended up being a pretty hapless Kentucky team. So all things considered, not the best reputation going on the road. And look, we know Beamer teams don't play their best early in the season. They play better in the later half of the season. But as I mentioned, you kind of have your back up against the wall. You can't afford another loss before the toughest part of your schedule gets here. Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. I think this team hasn't yet gone on the road. Like, Beamer said, when you go on the road, you need to bring, your best competitor, if you will, right? Like bring, your competition sense. And, I think this team kind of needs that after a wake-up call. They need to go into a hostile environment and, tap into that dog mentality, if you will, on the road. They're going to need to if they want to get this one done. Obviously we talk about how, how Missouri's not necessarily a pushover, if you will. They're going to keep climbing the rankings if they keep winning football games. And, this team is really talented, with Bo Pribula and whatnot. So you're, as Beamer said in that cut, you're going to need disciplined, focused football to get the job done up in Como. Of course, the question becomes around Lenore Sellers and if he's going to be available to play, as we mentioned a moment ago. And I do wonder, what is that energy going to be like if your starting quarterback's not there? Because, looking back to Saturday when they played against Vanderbilt, when Lenore Sellers went out, it seemed to kind of take the air out of the team. And from, a fan standpoint, you can understand why the fans be deflated. Hey, there goes your potential, first-round draft pick type of quarterback. But the players, that's when they're supposed to kind of rally around and say, hey, let's pick our guy up. He's not out there. Let's go out there and make some plays for him. And you just didn't quite see that to the degree that you wanted to. So that is an area of concern, certainly, among other reasons why you'd be concerned if Sellers can't play this weekend. Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Again, you're losing your Superman, if you will, for South Carolina. Luke Doty was capable of making some plays, though, showed the little shake, the little shimmy there on the first down run. I don't know, during that game against Vanderbilt, I was getting, vibes that, he's South Carolina's Diego Pavia, if you will, right? Still in school, but, a little bit more humble kid from the beach, in that sense. So, I mean, he's going to need to put together a pretty big performance to beat Missouri on the road if he's called upon. Yeah, and look, you give him a lot of credit for hanging around and being the team-first guy that he's been, but you like your chances a lot better with Lenore Sellers playing. I think that goes without saying. And I almost wonder, because in the history of the Beamer era, typically when we're the most down on this team is when they kind of surprise us, right?
Right.
And it seems like every single year there's at least one loss or one game that you look at and say, man, that was such a low point that year. And then they respond immediately after that. Because, you know, like in 2022, you had the Florida loss, which was dog ugly.
Awful.
Right? You don't even show up offensively. The only points you get off are a Kai Kroger fake field goal, and then you go out there next 2 weeks and beat two teams that were on the cusp of the college ball playoff. And as it even sounds impossible just saying it back, even though we know what happened there. 2023, you blew the you blew the game against Florida.
Right.
I'm trying to remember who they played the week after that. I don't remember if they won that game or not. Let me see here. Was it Missouri after that?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, they lost the game against Florida, and that was in the middle of that 4-game losing streak. God,
Right.
yeah, that was really bad there. But I guess a more recent example would be last year, where you had Ole Miss come in here and just dominate you for 4 quarters, coming off of a bye, no less. And that game was obviously ugly. And then you go the week after that, and you didn't win against Alabama, but you played a pretty darn good game against a team that we thought was going to be breathing fire after getting upset by Vanderbilt the week before. And that immediately after that, you start the 6-game winning streak to close out the season. So we've seen a track record of this team being its best when they're being doubted. And I guess through the first 3 games of the year, again, you're being ranked in the top 12, even to the top 10, going in to the week 2 game against South Carolina State. There's a lot of hype behind you. People are talking about you. They're praising you. And that's in the Beamer era, not a position that Carolina's been in a whole lot. And I almost wonder if that's an area of uncomfortability with this program, that now that they are back to being the underdog, again, as you mentioned, like a 2-touchdown dog going into this weekend, which the Sellers injury has a lot to do with that. Maybe that's exactly what they need to be, is the team that's getting overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. That's, the progression of a program in the SEC. You kind of have to get used to being talked about. And, that's what I was trying to get at earlier, I guess, with Lenoris being out. If he's out, it'll be a second for him to breathe, right? That hype and everything on his shoulders, it can be a lot to carry. And, being the Heisman favorite, being talked about this early, it's a lot to kind of keep consistent throughout the year. So, it'd be some breathing room for 16. Obviously, you absolutely need him if you like your chances in this game. But, again, I think this team, they play well with their backs up against the wall. The Florida, loss was brutal. They looked dead in the water. There was no life on offense. There was no life on defense. And, I wouldn't say that's entirely the case from Saturday night, but, I mean, you didn't like a lot of what you saw against Vandy. So this would be the perfect opportunity to regain a lot of the faith, in this fan base, and then nationally, too, to be like, okay, it was just one bad week for South Carolina and plenty of time to right the ship.
Well, and the funny thing about that Florida loss, that was at a time when the fan base was very frustrated with the offense. And we don't know when that come to Jesus meeting happened necessarily between Shane Beamer at the time, Marcus Satterfield, but something obviously changed in those last 2 games that helped South Carolina's offense be what it was. And again, we're 3 games into the season, and Beamer alluded to it yesterday. He was pushing back on the notion of this conspiracy about Sellers not being asked to run the ball as much. But again, similar situation where your offense looked awful, and I really hope, fingers crossed, they come out there and surprise us this weekend, and we're coming in here on Monday saying, wow, where's that been? Yes, that's exactly what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a perfect opportunity to open up the playbook, right? Let everyone, make plays, because your talent's more spread across the board, or I guess it's more even, without Lenoris, it's more scattered. So I don't know. I think, Shula, you might as well open it up, right? You're going to need it to beat Missouri. Because Missouri's going to bring everything they got to try to drag you down and win this football game. As Elijah mentioned on the walkthrough, you have to mud this game up. You have to make it, a scrappy football game. If you don't have Lenoris Sellers, you're going to have to do everything that you can, to claw your way to the finish line and make this, a close game till the end.
Yeah, we talked about how much special teams and defense picked this team up in the first couple games of the year. You would have to do the same thing this weekend. You're going to have those other 2 facets of the game be at their absolute best if Sellers is not able to go this weekend. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what you saw from this defense this weekend, it's no really reason to hit the panic button, especially after what you saw the first 2 weeks. From what you didn't see this weekend from the defense was good tackling, right? And then a little bit of undisciplined, frustrations towards the end. Those are both fixable things, and I think this defense is certainly motivated. This week they got to stop the run. It's something they failed to do last week. They were weren't keyed up. They weren't, doing their roles exactly how it was. They weren't finishing plays. This Missouri team is so, by the book, run the football down your throat. It's a big opportunity for this defense to make a statement.
So there's obviously a lot of concern here in the Midlands. There's also quite a bit of concern in the upstate. And Dabo Swinney was swinging back yesterday in his presser, which we'll get into coming up next. It is the Halftime Show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Tyler Head for our friends over at Tilly's Warehouse, the first wine and spirits store in 5 Points in the past 20 years. Yes, I've been telling you about them for weeks now. They've got everything that you could want in a wine and spirits store. Yes, they even have G4 tequila as well as the Garnet and Black vodka, which have 25% proceeds that go to the Garnet Trust, which helps out South Carolina athletics and NIL. They got High Noons. They got Sun Chasers. They also have a Class B liquor license that allows them to sell to bars there in the 5 Points area as well, in case you're running low on your stock. You can mention that you heard this ad on 107.5 The Game and get 10% off any wine selection as well. And also stay connected with them on Instagram and Facebook, or visit their website at tillyswarehouse.com for more information and discover why Tilly's is your new must-visit spot over in 5 Points. Welcome back in. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, hanging out with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Tomorrow, busy day here on the game. From 3 until 6, post-game show is going to be live at Old Mill Brew Pub at 711 East Main Street over in Lexington. Carolina calls tomorrow night with Coach Beamer and Tide Ellis at 7, and then following that, Thursday night football with the Dolphins and the Bills. Said to Jack earlier, I think that one could get very ugly, considering where the Bills are and where the Dolphins are right now.
Right.
When you're having players-only meetings after 1 week, tells me you're probably cooked for the year.
Yeah, busy night tomorrow night for you guys,
yeah.
right? Yeah. But no, I agree. I think, the Bills are way ahead of Miami, and Miami going nowhere fast. I like Mike McDaniel. I think, he's a good, fun coach for the league. I hope he holds on to his job.
It's fun until you start losing.
Right, exactly. And, I would hope at least they would give him, at least another quarterback, because they've been holding on to Tua for quite some time. And so you'd like a little refresh. I don't know if Quinn Ewers is the answer there either. But, I don't know. Tua had a good week last week, so I don't know. Maybe they surprised some people. The Dolphins.
Another program that's not having the best time right now, it's Clemson Tigers. They lost their second game of the season this past weekend with the walk-off field goal by Georgia Tech on the flats out there in Atlanta. And Dabo, cut number 36, Dave, you'll enjoy this one, got back up on his soapbox once again to remind people of all that he's accomplished in his tenure as the Clemson head coach.
If they want me gone, if they tired of winning, they can send me on their way, because that's all we've done is win. So if they tired of winning, we've won this league 8 out of the last 10 years. Is that not good? I'm just asking, is that good? I don't know if that's good or not. To win your league 8 out of 10 years, to go to the playoffs 7 out of 10 years, be in 4 national championships, win it twice. Yeah, we're a little down right now. Take your shots, but I got a long memory, in case y'all don't know. We'll be all right. We'll bounce back. This is a program built to last, always has been, always will be. And I would just say, if you give up on us if you don't believe in us because we've lost 2 games down to the last straight and you didn't believe in us anyway, so it don't matter. You wasn't all in anyway. If you're all in, you burn the ships, man. There ain't no exit strategy. Like, you're freaking all in. And hey, listen, if Clemson's tired of winning, they send me on my way, but I'm gonna go somewhere else and coach. I ain't going to the beach. Hell, I'm 55. I got a long way to go. Y'all gonna have to deal with me for a while. I got a long way to go. I'm just getting going. I'm just now good enough to be a head coach.
Boy, that sounds very reminiscent of another rant that he went on about 2 years ago when the fan base was upset with where Clemson was at the time in the 2023 season, when myself from Spartanburg called into his radio show, and he once again went on a rant where he listed out all his accomplishments and basically said, hey, be thankful I'm here type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think after the LSU game, I compared him to a dad whose, kid isn't necessarily doing well in one class, kind of frustrated, like, hey, we still got it. This is, the kid just failed the midterm. And it's like, hey, we still remember everything that we still did. Like, we're trying for a B- here kind of thing. Like, I don't know. Dabo, I don't know if this is a bad thing, right? Like, because you would think this is a bad thing because last time he kind of turned it around a little bit, right? This is the life cycle of Dabo where slowly gets more and more pissed off as it goes along, and then eventually something, clicks, right?
Yeah.
And his team figures it out. So I don't know if you can say it's a good or a bad thing. All I know is he was pissed. Yeah,
he definitely was, and I think the fan base is justified in feeling upset. Now, I'm not advocating for people to run the guy out of town because, again, he has accomplished a lot. He's the best coach that this program has ever seen, and if you were to move on from him, who are you going to get that's going to be able to come in and have the same type of success that he's had? But there's a frustration with the way that this program is being run counter to what the rest of college football is. And again, Dabo has talked about, the NIL component, and they're not against it, but I don't think anybody's looking at Clemson saying, well, they have NIL resources, out the you-know-what. He was very hesitant to the transfer portal until basically this past offseason. And even then, it's only been a couple of guys added, and he's harped on player development, high school recruiting, and all those kind of things, which are fine. But this was supposed to be the year where he had the I told you so, right? He was supposed to come in here this season with all this returning talent and say, look, this is what doing things the old school way can still get you. I can still win championships, still win national championships, and still be at the top of college football. And through 3 games, you haven't seen it. They've played at least one bad half in every game. Bad second half against LSU, bad first half against Troy, and a bad first half against Georgia Tech over the weekend. And they've still got a ton more tough games to go later on this year. One of those being South Carolina, obviously. And if I'm a Clemson fan, I don't see a lot of optimism in the rest of the season right now.
Yeah, absolutely not, Tyler. I think the fan base is only going to continue to get more disgruntled. And again, it brings up the question, if he beats South Carolina, I guess he hold on to his job? Yeah. I would assume he's not going to be in that much hot water by the time it gets to that game. But if he keeps losing, you never know. Could be there. Tyler, I look at, a tale of two programs, right? You look at where, Clemson was, national champion favorites, right? A lot of people picking them to go far in the college football playoff and, haven't really done anything to this point. Then you look at Georgia, right? Georgia, they lost everybody. Is this the death of Kirby and that program and Georgia being on the national stage? And you look at what Kirby's been able to do and silencing all the doubters there. So, I think it's kind of sliding for Dabo unless they can figure out, how to motivate these guys and like Kirby usually does. And hey, everybody's doubting you. Everybody's doubting you. Like Dabo, everybody's doubting him now, right?
Sure.
But at the beginning of the season, when you're picked to finish pretty far in the playoff, like you got to find a way to motivate your team. And Clemson's looked flat because of it.
Now, to be fair, let's go back to the beginning of the season in 2024, where they got absolutely flattened by Georgia in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in the kickoff game in week number 1, and there were the same kind of people being upset that, hey, look, there's a program that's got NIL that's leaning into the portal and all those kind of things. We need to get on their level. And they did end up turning it around and obviously were able to be good enough to make the college ball playoff by virtue of winning the ACC championship. So I'm not ruling them out of anything, but as somebody that thought very highly of Clemson going into the season, I didn't expect them to be this shaky coming out of the gate. And again, your pathway at this point is to win the ACC and make the college ball playoff. You only have one loss in conference. Even if Georgia Tech went undefeated, you could still get there and play them in the conference championship as a one-loss team. But again, I don't know if they are built for that, considering the struggles they've had. And again, it's one of those things that some things are fundamental that you can fix during the week, and some things are just within the culture of your team that are going to be consistent issues throughout the year. What can they fix, and what are they going to continue to do week in and week out is my biggest question.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Again, it brings up the question. You think they're having players-only meetings up there in Clemson?
I don't think they're to that point yet.
Yeah, right. I don't think it's to that point yet, but it might be, something to where like they need to investigate, because right now it's an effort thing. Like the way Dabo has been, in his press conferences, just tell me like these guys think they still, for some part of them, still think, that they're almighty Clemson and, we're still good. It'll take care of itself. And, you can kind of see that in Dabo's frustration. So I don't know what it is, but somehow these guys have to, figure out that they're in the mud right now, and everyone is looking over them and wondering, if they're ever going to get back to where they were.
Yeah. Now, again, you have a track record of Clemson teams when people have doubted them as well that have come back and said, wow, okay, I didn't think the team was going to end up being that good. So I don't think anybody's ready to write them off as of yet, but the fan base is not wrong for being concerned. And similarly to with Coach Beamer yesterday with his defense of the way the offense is operating and run sellers and all that kind of stuff, when people hear those kind of responses, when Dabo, again, lists off all his accolades and says, be appreciative for all that I've done with you, that doesn't make people say, oh, yeah, you're right. It makes people want to push back even further because now you're getting defensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, Tyler, it feels a little bit, I'm a man, I'm 40-esque. No,
a little bit.
I'm a man, I'm 55-esque.
I say he did mention his age.
Right, he did mention his age. So I don't know, a little bit of pushback, and that's not necessarily, everything that they, the people up in Clemson want to hear. It's all about the shiny new toy in college football. Like, what are you doing for me now?
Yeah.
And so if that fan base is going to continue to have that mentality, we might, potentially see a shift in the landscape of college football with Dabo.
So what fan base in the Palmetto State is more justified in their frustration? We'll discuss that next to wrap up hour number 1. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Wednesday on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave hanging out with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. We discussed Dabo Swinney's rant in the last segment. We, of course, know what Beamer said yesterday in reference to the conspiracies around the offense. So this was both obviously in reference to neither fan base being pleased with what they saw over the weekend and how both seasons have started so far. So the question to me is, which fan base is more justified in their frustration? And I think they're both justified to some degree, but you have on one side, you have the South Carolina fan who feels like your Heisman-level quarterback is being restrained in the offense. I'm not saying that's true or not. That's just the sentiment that the fan base feels. And on the other side, you have a Clemson fan base that looks at what they thought might have been a national championship caliber team starting off the year 1 and 2, losing to, there's no like shame in losing to LSU. That's a good quality loss, and they could end up being the best team in the country, but like sleepwalking against Troy and then losing to a Georgia Tech team that talent-wise you were better than, like both those things are unacceptable. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, from the Clemson fan perspective, I think you should be more disgruntled, I guess, with the expectations were higher, and, it's a height that Dabo's achieved for you before. This, not to ding South Carolina, but, I mean, it's, it was a little over-optimistic to think that you were going to, make the playoff and then have success in it. I think the bar was making the playoff, and then you go from there. So I think this slow start, too, I think from a South Carolina perspective, from what you saw in the first 2 weeks, and then everything, like the defense has played really, really well to this point, and they were just a little undisciplined against Vandy. I think you have a little bit more hope for, I guess, recovering the skid and righting, the ship for this season, more or less for Clemson. Everything seems doomed, if you will.
Yeah, and again, both programs are showing you the ability to turn things around as the season goes along, and my gosh, if Sellers could go out there and play this weekend against Missouri and look like his old self again and be running around all over the place, and we as a fan base go, okay, finally that's exactly what we've been asking for, and God, Clemson can go out, I don't even know who their next opponent is, and maul whoever that is, and people say, okay, I feel a little bit better about that. But the days before those games happen, though, people are obviously upset, and rightfully so.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Again, there's going to be their fair share of doubts for both teams, respectively, based on what you've done to this point. But again, I think this South Carolina team, without Lenore Sellers, there's a lot more question marks. But if he's healthy and back at the helm, I think everything there you can have all the lessons and all the lumps. Hope that those guys learn from those, and you keep building. As Shane Beamer teams usually do.
Oh, Clemson has Syracuse this weekend.
It's a tough game.
That is a tough game, tricky game. Now,
Brown.
Syracuse hasn't looked as strong to start the season as they closed last year, but you don't take them seriously. That's a well-coached team. That's one that can come in there and really put you in a bad spot if you start 1 and 3.
Yeah, that was a team that was doing wind sprints after the game. I don't know if you're a fan of that.
I love that, man.
I do. I'm with it. I heard him getting some criticisms for it being so public or whatever, but I think that's part of the point, right? You want these guys running them in uniform. You don't want them, right after the game, have time to decompress, take all their stuff off, and run it when everyone's out of the building. That's part of it. You're running in front of the people that, you didn't have the effort for.
And that, to me, sends a message to your fan base like, hey, because they had won the game against UConn in overtime. And again, UConn is a program that's not great at the FBS level. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that were leaving the game that day saying, man, we shouldn't be playing tight games against UConn. And when you see your coach making the team run wind sprints, that sends a message that, hey, we won, but this is not an acceptable way to win. We got to be better than this.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I don't know if we'd see that in the SEC. Probably. Like I could see, which coach.
I would say which coach
Lane
is more inclined. You think Lane Kiffin would do that in the SEC?
Yeah, most likely. Yeah. I don't know. He's the shenanigans and everything. Like him getting tarmacked. Like I feel like it's just. And now, granted, that's not anything to do with his team, but like. The Lane Kiffin lore, like I feel like he just gets so pissed off and be like, nah, get him on the line.
I feel like that'd be like a Kirby thing.
I was gonna say Kirby too, because and disciplined and
Fran Brown is from the Kirby Georgia, Smart, coaching tree. And there's similarities between those two guys in the way that they approach their program. I could see Kirby doing that.
God, did you see Drake doing it? Drake or Shane, I guess, for this matter.
If the loss would, it would have to be after a really bad loss.
Yeah,
I feel like if they would do it, it would have to be after just like an egregiously ugly loss, which I don't know, maybe you could have done it this weekend after Vanderbilt. I could see Elko doing that.
Yeah.
Again, from the standpoint of a win, if you don't feel like the win was good enough, like Kirby, Elko,
Yeah.
I don't think
Saban
Lane
for
would do
sure.
it. Saban, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Definitely not DeBoer.
Definitely not DeBoer. Yeah, I can't think of any other coach in the SEC that I could see doing that same thing.
Right, yeah, I'm with you, Tyler. And the SEC's tough to do. I mean, there's so much history, and right, like I don't know if they view that as like Bush League, but it's just not as common, right? Like Fran Brown can do it up in the ACC, all he wants. In Syracuse, it's different. They're changing the culture,
Maybe instead of sprints, make them run stairs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
especially
some of these stadiums that have 3 decks.
I was gonna say
make them run all the way to the top.
Carry Dome up in Cuse. That would that's real punishment after.
Oh
the game.
yeah,
like that.
For sure.
You learn your lesson real quick when your hammies and quads are burning the next day.
Yeah, no, I had no problem with Fran Brown doing that. And look, I'm sure that fan base is upset too with maybe not the strongest start of the season, though the level of expectation at Syracuse is different than what you have at, Clemson and in South Carolina. So, and you know what? Fans being upset means they care. Right. And I get it. Both Beamer and Dabo pushing back, but there's a reason why fans are so upset because they care so much and they see the upside potential for these teams.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Every time I, see the disgruntling of the South Carolina fan base, I just, it's good sports town. You want a fan base that cares this much. And granted, you're always going to have your people off the cusp, but yeah, disgruntled nonetheless.
We'll take a peek at Mizzou coming up next. Also let you listen to the conversation we had earlier on in the morning with Gabe DeArmond of Power Mizzou. That's all coming up in hour number 2 as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina rolls along on your Wednesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is hour number 2 of the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave along with you here on your Wednesday. There we go. Got to make sure that the live stream was all set up correctly. On your Wednesday here on the game. Again, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we do have a plan for Bill Gunner to be back in here coming up on Monday. He's obviously dealt with some health issues here as of late, so excited to get him back. But we appreciate Joe and Scott Hamilton and everybody else that's filled in over these past couple of over a month now while Bill's been out.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to fill in. And, amongst good company with Scott Hamilton, the legend, the man, the myth, the legend, if you will.
Yeah, he's a handful to keep up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, happy to do what I can. And then also happy Bill's coming back, man. Good to be back to regularly scheduled programming.
Obviously, he'll be in here Monday to react to the Missouri game. And I don't know, what's your vibe right now? How are we feeling on Wednesday about this game coming up Saturday?
I think a lot of it depends on your quarterback, right? You wonder how bad this concussion is, right? If it's one of those where you can get back and practice and be ready for game prep, or, if you're going to be without him. I think there's going to be gamesmanship on the injury report like we talked about a little bit earlier. He's going to be doubtful. But again, Brady Hunt was doubtful last week and 2 weeks ago against SC State and then played and, had a productive week respectfully. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I think it depends on the health of Lenore Sellers and, going up there. It's a long road trip. It's a brutal one. You got to play disciplined football. I think defensively you should feel good about that, but this offense has too many questions right now.
And this is a place that's not treated Carolina well over the years. 2017 is the last time they won on the road in Como, and they're just a program that always gives you fits, whether it's here or there. And again, they very nearly broke your hearts last year with that late touchdown to Luther Burden, and thankfully Rocket Sanders took the rock into the end zone for what in my time of attending games was the loudest moment I've experienced at Williams-Brice Stadium. But again, it almost went the other way there late with Jalen Kilgore, surrendering that touchdown. So you're going on the road, first road test, and again, to not know the status of your quarterback on Wednesday and if he's available to play, there's always that question of, man, if he gets hit again, does he go out again? Like, it's not a comfortable situation to be going into this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely not, Tyler. But again, this is the SEC. You got to do what you got to do week in and week out. You got to win football games. Tough road test. It's the longest one. I think for South Carolina, A&M might be a little bit longer of a flight, but you got 2 long road trips. And when you're making long road trips, you got to be focused, right? It's easy to get, I guess, lost in the shuffle and everything with game day and going on the road. But played a cut earlier about Shane Beamer talking about competition and bringing your best on the road. You're going to need to in Como. It's that program has been revitalized. It's not no longer are the days where the stands are kind of half full. This is a night game on the road in the SEC. That place is going to be packed, and it's going to be very much against South Carolina, as you would imagine.
Yeah, it is a rivalry game.
Right.
For whatever that's worth. I know we don't put as much stock into that as obviously like the Palmetto Bowl, but there is a trophy on the line, which I want to get back into our trophy discussion from the summer coming up tomorrow, because I do have a list, and I will remind you of where I put the Mayor's Cup because it was not very high on that list. But we'll get into that a little bit coming up tomorrow. But I think Missouri is a team that we looked at in the offseason as, man, you lose Brady Cook, you lose Luther Burden, you lose Theo Weiss, you lose Nate Noel, you lose guys on defense. Like, okay, man, there's no way this team is going to be able to replicate what they did in the past couple seasons. And I get it. They played Central Arkansas in Louisiana in 2 of their 3 games so far this year, but they looked pretty good against Kansas in that game 2 weeks ago. Had to come back in that game. Bo Perbila running the offense well. Like, this is a team that I don't think we were all expecting to be maybe as good as they are going into this matchup. Yeah, absolutely. They beat a good Kansas team. Lance Leopold having that program, working its way out of basketball school, territory, if you will. But they showed a lot of fight in that game, and they looked focused going into this one. And from a South Carolina perspective, you want to, disrupt all that. You want to disrupt the momentum and just all the good football that they've been playing, good focused football that they've been playing as of late. You want to drag this one out and mud it up for sure. When you look at Bo Perbula, he was somebody that was obviously the backup to Drew Aller at Penn State, and famously last year had to leave Penn State prior to their playoff run because of the ridiculous nature of the way the transfer portal's set up, where he's like, hey, if I don't go now, I'm not going to have a landing spot. So he had to leave before Penn State, rode all the way to the, semifinals a year ago. And I feel like we didn't know enough about him, right? He came in some spot duty. Drew Allard got hurt in the Wisconsin game last year. He helped lead that team at the very end to help win that game. But we just didn't know enough about the guy. And again, two of the opponents, not exactly the highest quality, but just look at the Kansas game alone. 3 of 39, 334, 3 touchdowns in that game. Like, that's pretty darn impressive against what we think is probably going to be a quality team in the Big 12. So for at least that one game sample size, looked pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And, the game, if South Carolina, it focuses on their keys and does their job defensively, it's going to come down to Bo Perbula making plays, right? If the front seven is good, stopping the run for South Carolina, it's going to be left to this defensive backfield to make some plays on the football as, Missouri stretches out the offense and has them start, rolling out and passing the football. So, I think if the front seven can do their job, I think this defensive backfield for South Carolina, as banged up as it has been, is talented enough to break this game open and really disrupt things for South Carolina.
And, Missouri runs those outside zone runs, and we'll get into this. You'll hear Gabe Dearman from Power Mizzou talking about this coming up in a minute when we rack that conversations, and they've had so much success with transfer portal running backs over the past couple of years. Cody Schrader, Nate Noel, and this year Ahmad Hardy coming over from Louisiana Monroe. He ran for 250 last week against Lou Lafayette. He's been over 100 yards in each and every game. He's got a ton of yards after contact. He's breaking tackles left and right. Like, this guy is an absolute handful that Carolina's going to have to deal with for all 4 quarters on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Ahmad Hardy, the next generation of good Missouri back. It feels like they're bringing these guys out of a factory, if you will. Tyler Beatty and Cody Schrader were, I thought were the two, I guess, the shining, the difference makers, if you will, the outliers in that, room and program, both breaking the rushing records respectively. But I don't know, for some way, somehow, Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz keep churning these guys out, these, 100-yard-a-game rushers. It's powerful. And, again, if you're South Carolina's defense, you got to stay disciplined and stay fitted on your keys and, lay the boom sometimes, too.
And they may have one of the most impactful transfers within the conference in bringing in Kevin Coleman Jr. over from Mississippi State, who was just shy of 1,000 yards a season ago in a very bad Mississippi State team. But he's come in and he's electrified in this offense so far. 258 yards and 1 touchdown on the season, and he is the go-to guy for Bo Perbula in this offense that is going to test this secondary that, again, we don't even know if Judge Collier is going to play this weekend, right? Like, he was out this past weekend. So, okay, does CC match up with him? How does that go? Like, this is a guy you're going to have to deal with all day on Saturday as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Again, you got to be focused on keys, disciplined on defense, because this Missouri team is throwing a lot at you. They're talented. They're ranked, in the top 25 for a reason. And, Eli Drinkwitz has been getting Steve Spurrier comparisons. I know the people here at South Carolina don't necessarily like that.
Sure.
But, again, like similar to Spurrier, his teams get better as the year goes along. And, they'll float from the outside and be like, as the year goes along, it's like, wait, these guys are really, really good.
Yep.
And we got to pay attention to them. So if South Carolina needs to win this game, they got to disrupt some things.
We'll get some more details on this Missouri program ahead of Saturday's matchup coming up next. Gabe Dearman of Power Mizzou joined all of us a little bit earlier on in the 11 o'clock hour, and we'll react that conversation coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, along with you on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you here on your Wednesday. Wrapping up the show as we start to turn our attention ahead to the weekend as Carolina will have its first true road game of the season, taking on the Missouri Tigers out in the other Columbia. To talk about those Tigers, joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines is Gabe Dierman of Power Mizzou. Joining us once again, Gabe, we do appreciate your time as always. We were just talking about it there in the last segment. You know, this Missouri team lost so much, especially offensively, from a year ago. We didn't know how good they were going to be, and albeit, you know, Central Arkansas and Louisiana aren't the toughest opponents, but how they looked against Kansas a couple weeks ago, I think, is an indication that this team is definitely maybe right in line with those past couple teams that did win double-digit games. How are you feeling about what you've seen so far out of Mizzou this season?
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about everything Missouri lost, and I think that was kind of the national opinion was look how much they lost, especially on offense. I mean, Armand Nimbo, first-round pick, Luther Burden, second-round pick, Theo Weiss, Brady Cook. But the truth was Missouri wasn't very good on offense last year. Like, they had a whole bunch of names, but they didn't have to replace that much production. Their offense just never really got on track last year. Bo Prabula came in from Penn State at quarterback, and look, it's 3 games. You mentioned the competition, and that's absolutely a factor. I feel fairly confident that this is the best Missouri's been at quarterback since Drew Lock left in 2018. He has made every throw you want him to make. He's athletic. He can run the ball. Hasn't had to do that a lot in the last couple games, but we know it's a part of his game. You know, Ahmad Hardy, second in the country in rushing. Kevin Coleman, he should have been an all-SEC pick at Mississippi State last year. He wasn't. He's got 24 catches for 258. They finally started using the tight end. Brett Northfleet has 3 touchdowns. I mean, it all has kind of worked on that side of the ball so far, and Kirby Moore is getting some national recognition for the job he's done. And obviously, things get a lot tougher starting Saturday night.
Hey, Gabe, it's Wes. Appreciate you hopping on, man. I was about to ask you about Bo Prabula, but you already took that one from me, so we'll move along to some other things. What is it? You watch it every single week. What is it about this stretch zone, outside zone, whatever you want to call it, that when it's really cooking, that just can give defenses fits? And, I mean, we've seen it with South Carolina, even what I think was a great South Carolina defense last year, game to game. As that second half wore on, it really seemed like Missouri was about to stun them and Williams-Brice behind a really good rushing attack. I think Chris mentioned earlier, I don't think anybody else went over 150, like the Mizzou back did last year against South Carolina. Just what is it about this scheme that when it is cooking, it gives people trouble?
Yeah, it is really Eli Drinkwitz's calling card. I mean, when he came here, we all kind of thought, hey, this young hotshot offensive coordinator, he's going to throw the ball all over the place. And the truth is, it's been the running game. I mean, his first year here, Larry Roundtree, in that shortened COVID season, had 800 yards rushing. And then he goes to Tyler Beatty, who breaks the single-season school rushing record. And then he goes to Cody Schrader, a former D2 kid who breaks the school rushing record and finishes 8th in the Heisman. Last year, it's Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll combined. No matter who's been back there, they have always run the ball really well. And I think what this Missouri team has that maybe past teams haven't had, like the line has done pretty well. Don't get me wrong. You don't run for that many yards without good blocking. But Ahmad Hardy does so much of this on his own. Last year he ran for over 1,000 yards after contact. This year he leads the country with 330 yards after contact and 28 missed tackles forced. I mean, he's a guy that even when the blocking's not there, like some of his best runs this year have been for no gain or 1 yard. You look and he should lose 4 yards because there's 2 guys there in the backfield, and somehow he drags them back to the line of scrimmage. So he just gets every yard available there. And then obviously, hey, when the blocking's there, he's capable of a little bit more. But this really is what Drinkwitz wants to do offensively.
Gabe, it's Chris. Thanks for taking time, man. So let's look at the defense. I mean, we were talking earlier about a couple guys that South Carolina was involved with during the portal process, and Damon Wilson at edge and Trotter at linebacker. You also looked at the fact, man, I feel like a theme in this game and for Missouri is just every year they've got dudes on the defensive line, that cause problems for the opposition. Tell us about the defense this year, just how it shaped up. They lost some guys. They brought some guys back. They plugged in these couple transfers. What does that side of the ball look like through the first few games? How does it project out to this game?
Yeah, it really has been Missouri's calling card, like you said, is that front four. And I told everybody that I talked to this preseason, like Missouri really believed it had defensive ends that could stack up with any in the country. And the coaches felt like they might have the best front seven in the league. Now, look, there's a long way to go for that to be the case. Damon Wilson has, 3 sacks. I think in 43 pass rushes, he's got like 9 pressures. So he's getting on the quarterback more than 20% of the time. He's the headliner, but Zion Young on the other side, Chris McClellan inside is really good. I think linebacker's their deepest position. I mean, they've got Trotter. Tristan Newsom came back on the Diego Pavio rule, which, by the way, now apparently is just infinity. He's just going to come back every year. So that's good news for guys that just never want to quit playing college football. Khalil Jacobs is a guy who was hurt in Game 5 last year after being a transfer from South Alabama. They really like him. And then Nick Rodriguez is their 4th linebacker. And Missouri said coming out of spring football, he had the best spring of anybody on the team. The defense has been a little bit tougher to judge than the offense because they've faced, I'm actually going to write a story today. They faced the second fewest plays of anybody in America. In 3 games, opposing offenses have only run 147 plays. So they just haven't been out there. Missouri has been very good on defense, but the problem is they have given up big plays. And it was the problem they faced last year. They would be really good like 95% of the time, but then one 50-yard play can change a game. They gave up an 84-yard run to Louisiana, which obviously didn't matter. It was like, 35-3 at the time, so it's not that big a deal. But they gave up some big passing plays to Kansas. They outgained Kansas by almost 400 yards, and somehow that was a game they were trailing with 10 minutes to go, and that was because of the big plays. And so that's probably the one thing Missouri has to figure out. When you make a mistake at safety, it costs you points, and Missouri has some safeties that get a little bit over aggressive.
Again, talking to Gabe DeAirman of Power Mizzou here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. As you look into this game this upcoming weekend, of course, you got to see a South Carolina team pull off one of its best comebacks last year with the last-second touchdown to Rocket Sanders and a huge victory that was part of that stretch run of 6 games at the end of last year that got them at least on the bubble of the college football playoff. And it's kind of a 180 where right now the offense is struggling. We've been talking about it all week long with the concerns coming away from the Vanderbilt game. When you look at this South Carolina team, what stands out to you and how do you think they match up with Missouri coming up this weekend?
So coming into this year, I thought my opinion of South Carolina was that they might be a little bit like Missouri was last year, which is that team that kind of came out of nowhere and caught everybody's attention and finished strong. And so they got all this offseason, hype and love. And then that's hard to handle for a team that's never been there, right? Missouri had it happen to them. They got blown out by A&M and then blown out by Alabama, and that really ended any playoff hopes they had. I mean, had a nice 10-win year and all that, but it did fall a little bit short of what people thought. And I wondered coming in, hey, is South Carolina ready to be the hunted rather than being the hunter? And I don't know if that's what has held them back or not. It might just be much more basic of, hey, they haven't played very well and they're having trouble picking up a new offense. If you look at this game, I think 2 months ago, guys, I think South Carolina would have been favored in this game by 3 to 5 points. And now it's Missouri by 12, and everybody is just burying South Carolina. And logic tells me Missouri should win this game and maybe win it comfortably, but I've seen this series too much. Like, how many times in this series since 2012 has the team you thought would not win this game won this game? It seems to happen more often than not, and I think this is kind of the reckoning for South Carolina. I mean, it's the old Yogi Berra thing. It's getting late early around here. Like, yeah, 1 game, no big deal. 2 games, no big deal. You get into week 3 and 4 and you continue to struggle. It's no longer early. That just becomes who you are. So I think this is huge for South Carolina if they want to be. I mean, I don't know. You guys would know this better than I do. I think it's probably, hey, let's shelf the playoff talk for a little while. Let's just try to play well and win a football game and see where it goes. But if they want to be anywhere near what everybody thought they were going to be, I think they have to get a turnaround and probably do it this week.
Yeah, for sure. Fair. Definitely. Gabe, I'm curious, being around the Missouri program like you are, I never thought of Missouri as necessarily being one of the programs that was going to have all the resources to go spend in terms of NIL and have all this success in the transfer portal. But outside looking in, I mean, I think they've done about as good a job as anybody of using the portal to upgrade the overall talent, to upgrade the depth, to go get some impact guys on offense and defense. But being there like you are and covering it on the day-to-day, is Missouri spending – like NIL-wise, the way it kind of feels like they are from the outside looking in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's Texas Tech,
right,
but I don't think anybody's Texas Tech. But they've been they were so far out in front of this. And Eli Drinkwitz deserves credit for getting the money. But Desiree Reed-Francois, who used to be the AD and now she's at Arizona, deserves a lot of credit too. The administration here really got out in front. Like, you see all these just ridiculous state laws across the country that basically say we can do anything we want and you can't come tell us we can't. I mean, the first one was written by Missouri and was passed. I mean, I read the law and I said, well, this is insane. I've never seen anything like this. And now everybody has it, so they deserve credit on that front. And, Drinkwitz had a top 15 or 20 recruiting class last year. And 4 of the top 6 kids in that class took Missouri's money, didn't really play that much last year, and now they're somewhere else. Jalen Brown's there at South Carolina. Kejuan Lacey's the number 2 rusher in the SEC down at Ole Miss. Williams Winery's up at Nebraska, and Courtney Crutchfield, a wide receivers at Arkansas. And so Drinkwitz really kind of recalculated things after that and said, you know what? I'm not going to spend these ridiculous amounts of money that it takes to get these 4- and 5-star freshmen if they're not ready to come in here and help us win day one, because I'm not going to pay them all this money and then have them leave and go be good somewhere else after I develop them for a year. So Missouri's recruiting class this year, I think they've got 10 commitments. They're all 3 stars, and Missouri fans don't even really care because they're going, cool, he just goes in the portal every year and gets kids that come in here and are really good, whether they're from other SEC programs, whether they're from the Big Ten, whether they're from the Sun Belt. I mean, I think, Lane Kiffin has the reputation, and he's done a great job in the portal, but I would put what Drinkwitz has done in the portal right up there with what Lane's done.
Last 60 seconds here, Gabe. Do you think Drinkwitz enjoys the title of maybe being one of the most quotable coaches in the SEC right now?
I hope so. I enjoy covering him. I mean, you go in, like I asked him about, with the injury reports and all that, and I would fully anticipate starting tonight. Lenora Sellers is questionable for 3 straight days, and it means absolutely nothing. So I asked him, like, hey, do you guys, are these working, and do you pay attention to these? And I really didn't ask because of what Lane Kiffin did with Austin Simmons last week. He said, I'm not going to get into Lane's business, but these reports are not for us. They're for another industry around college football. You just ask Eli a question and you never really know what he's going to say. So I think it's fun, and I kind of like this series because I think what you've got is 2 coaches that if they're yours, you really like them. And if they're anybody else's, they're, I think, pretty disliked probably universally among other teams.
I think a lot of people in the Gamecock fan base would probably agree with that one, Gabe. We appreciate your time, man. Looking forward to this weekend.
Thanks, Gabe. Appreciate you, man.
All right, guys. Appreciate you.
All right, that'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We'll take a look back at last year's Missouri game coming up tomorrow as we get closer to this matchup coming up this weekend as your Wednesday rolls along here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Tyra, Joe Machika, Captain Dave along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Again, you just heard a conversation with Gabe DeAirman, a Power Mizzou from earlier on in the morning. And, we talked there about Bo Perbula. And it's interesting because I feel like, and we're only 3 weeks in, so not everything's set in stone, but what we expected to be the quarterback stories of the SEC so far have not been. I think we all looked at a guy like Arch Manning, like, oh, man, here comes in this guy with all this hype. How good's he going to be? DJ Lagway, who's somebody that I was very high on. Guys like that just haven't quite lived up to the billing. Meanwhile, guys like Bo Perbula, Taylon Green, John Mateer, who I think was kind of expected to be a really good player. They've kind of stolen the headlines so far through these first couple weeks in the SEC.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And especially with the injury to Lenoris, a lot of the quarterback rankings in the SEC has been shaken up, most definitely. And Bo Perbula being, I guess one of the more unlikely guys coming out of the rubble of, the parity that is in college football this year. So I think, with Lenoris out these next couple weeks, there's still going to be that shakeup. John Mateer, certainly a surprise with how things were going in Norman prior to this season. But again, they've been able to turn some things around too. So interesting where it sits right now at the top of the SEC rankings for quarterbacks. Diego Pavia certainly making his case last week as well. But still a lot of football left to be played, Tyler.
Yeah, and you mentioned this. Josh Pate last night on his show put out his rankings of quarterbacks in the SEC, and he's somebody that had, I believe, Lenoris Sellers number 3 going into the season as SEC quarterbacks, and now he's got him at number 10.
Right.
Below the halfway point.
Yeah, I don't necessarily understand that. I guess the injury, one thing, but, I don't know. I think with what 16 has been able to show to this point, and, maybe it is, the injury and just the questions of, the offensive line and the communication and everything that was going into, I guess, the injury. But I don't know. I don't know if Josh Pate's, trying to, motivate him or something. Like, I don't know if Lenoris Sellers is looking to Josh Pate for any motivation, but
I think he's looking at what Sellers did a year ago compared to what he's doing right now. And again, going back to what Beamer said yesterday when talking to the media, defending by saying, hey, we're running the same stuff. We're running the same type of offense, and he's got opportunities to run. And again, defenses are going to try their best to take him away because, hey, he's the best player on the field. Let's do whatever we can to neutralize him and make those other guys on the offense beat him. Regardless of what the reason is, you can look at it. The numbers are not what they were, a year ago. And yeah, he's played in 2.5 games, so you can't say it's an exact full 3-game sample size, but his rushing numbers aren't the same. His passing numbers are below average to what he was doing towards the end of last season. At the end of the day, he's not affecting the game the same way, right? How many, wow plays have you seen him make so far this year? Ran for the touchdown against Virginia Tech
right,
on a designed run. He's had a couple good design runs here and there, made some good throws. Obviously, you had the great throw to Nick Harbor in game number 1, but through 2.5 games, again, didn't play the second half against Virginia Tech. He's not had too many of those oh my God, let me go back and watch that highlight type moments like I think a lot of us were expecting.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I think the ceiling is still there for Lenoris, but as I kind of mentioned earlier, too, I think this week could be a good reset for the kid too. If he's not fully healthy and can't play, seeing how things operate and seeing kind of what he's missing after being in the thick of it with all the hype behind him and everything, could be a good opportunity for him to see, how things are going and how we can fix it too, and have an opportunity when he is back, to right the ship and get back on the hype train.
Did you buy into the John Mateer hype in the offseason?
Not necessarily, because it was, again, cut and paste, and I'm still not entirely bought in. We knew he was a talented quarterback, but, they still have the bulk of their SEC schedule to go through. We're only in week 4, and so I don't know if you can fully, buy or sell teams yet, if based on reputation and just where they're at through these first couple weeks. Was I buying it before the season? No, not just because of the state that Venables had that program in. They were talking about his job preseason.
I was hesitant. I recognize what he did when he was at Washington State, much like Cam Ward when he was there a couple seasons ago before going to Miami. But you looked at some of his numbers, particularly passing against Power 4 opponents, and they weren't great. So I was like, okay, is this a guy that's just going to pad his stats against no-name teams and struggle against good ones? But we've at least seen one game against a quality opponent in Michigan that has a good defense from everything that we can tell so far. And he looked, outside of an interception, looked pretty good in that game. So yeah, like you're right. He still has the bulk of the SEC play coming up, but it really seems like Oklahoma's humming offensively. And again, we know the defense is always going to be good because of Brent Venables, but it's a night and day difference in quarterback from what I've seen compared to a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Night and day difference of, a lot of the preseason expectations for this team, too. They were predicted to finish again, to have some struggles, Venables to continue to be on the hot seat, but I think he's very much quieted those rumors to this point, and plenty of football to go and plenty of good SEC, defenses. Mateer is going to have to face, I'm sure some of these defenses are going to design up some designer blitzes and stuff like that. So he's going to be challenged. But again, to this point, Tyler, if they can find consistency throughout this schedule, like he's still going to be in that conversation, whether or not they still lose a couple games. If he's still playing well, he's going to probably make it to New York.
I think the biggest surprise in the SEC quarterback-wise so far has definitely been Joey Aguilar, who I think everybody was right to question coming in because it was just a weird situation. He wasn't option number one in the offseason. It just ended up being, hey, we need a quarterback. And Nico essentially took his spot at UCLA, so he transfers over to Tennessee. But I got to say, outside of, some questionable interceptions that he threw this past weekend against Georgia, he looks the part, right? And he's leading that high-powered Tennessee offense like we've seen so many quarterbacks in the past do, and he seems like a great fit. Now, again, I don't know if Tennessee backs up what they did a year ago by going to the college football playoff, but they were one quality kick away from beating Georgia and being 3-0 to start the season, and a lot of that success is due to Joey Aguilar and the way that he runs that offense.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Joey Aguilar been the pleasant surprise, and, looking like Tennessee's winning that trade out of UCLA somehow.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
Which Nico might actually be able to transfer again.
Right.
Because this coach got fired.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what happens, I guess, with Nico still. But Joey Aguilar's been a perfect, cut and paste into Tennessee's offense. It's exactly what they needed. And, continuing off the college football playoff appearance from last year where, it was a disappointing game. And you go to the Shoe in Ohio, and obviously it's not really a game that you're going to win, on the road in the cold. But, continuing momentum. Josh Heupel surprising a lot of people without, again, Nico leaving. They're still a program, they're still a system and rolling.
Elsewhere, you have Arch Manning, who, again, the hype perhaps bigger than any quarterback we've ever seen prior to making quality starts, right? And, man, through 3 weeks, he's struggled. He's getting booed by his own fans, missed on 10 consecutive passes the other day against UTEP, didn't look spectacular against Ohio State in week number 1. And the question is, is he hurt? Is he, are his mechanics off? Like a lot of weird conversations around Arch Manning, and they're about to get into the bulk of SEC play too. And if he does not take a significant step forward, it could be a rough year for him in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of the learning and development year we're seeing from Arch Manning. At the helm of Texas right now. Certainly another player with doubts, that arose as soon as, the questions of injury kind of came up. You saw him and Lenoir's, Heisman hopes kind of disappear similarly as soon as injury questions came up. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't know if, this is the end of Arch Manning or, I wouldn't say it's, we can certainly write the script on him yet. A lot of football left to be played still, but again, if he is hurt and they're hiding it, because again, the injury report's going to have to come out, and granted, he's had a couple weeks, I guess, to baby it a little bit, but who knows with Arch Manning still yet to be determined. I don't know. I don't think it's over, but I don't think it's going to be as good as everyone thought.
It's definitely not what Texas fans were expecting, and again, you're a program that came in with national championship level expectations coming into the season, and I think a lot of them look at this and say, well, dang, Quinn Ewers is looking better than this.
Yeah, most definitely. I would think so, too, Tyler. And again, this Texas team has national championship hopes, and when Arch comes out and, I guess disappoints to this point, still, again, a lot of season left to be played and, still favorites to make the college football playoff. But if Arch is going to play like this, man, it could get testy there in Austin.
Can't write the book on all these quarterbacks just yet. We're only 3 games into the season, but as we get into SEC play starting this weekend for a lot of teams, going to learn a whole lot more about these guys as the season does wear on. There's one quarterback that we just saw this past weekend that we thought maybe for the final time, but then again, maybe not. We'll discuss Diego Pavia and how the heck long he's going to hang around college football coming up next to wrap up hour number 2. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyrod, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, wrapping up hour number 2 here on your Wednesday on the game. We'll hand things over to Terry Ford coming up at top of the 2 o'clock hour. Reminder, tomorrow, very busy day here on the game. You got the post-game show live at the Old Mill Brew Pub at 711 East Main Street out in Lexington, and then Carolina Calls tomorrow night with Coach Beamer at 7 o'clock. And then following that, you got Thursday Night Football with the Dolphins and the Bills kicking off around 8:15, 8:20-ish. There's when those games usually end up getting started. And again, I don't think that's going to be a very pretty game considering where both those teams are at as of right now. But nevertheless, you can listen to it right here on the game.
Busy, Tyler. Busy. But, yeah, I also think that Bills-Dolphins game is going to be a blowout.
Looking forward to that, whichever way it ends up going.
Right.
Mike Shula and Clayton White and Joe DeCamills talked to the media earlier today. I'm currently in the process of chopping up Mike Shula, so we'll have plenty of that to talk about coming up tomorrow. As I have a feeling people are going to be probably not thrilled with whatever Mike Shula has had to say today, because no answer he gives, I think, is going to satisfy people unless he just gets up there and says, all right, Sellers is playing on Saturday and we're going to run him every single play. Is that good enough?
Right, I know. I would think he'd have to get out there with his whiteboard and start showing people like, hey, this is how we're going to do it, right? That might satisfy this fan base, I guess. But, I mean, rightfully so. You know, the frustrations are there because, you'd like to see Lenore Sellers, your playmaker, run the football a lot more. And, it's questionable that you'll have him this week and maybe gives an update here on his health. I doubt it. But we'll have to see. I think, with or without Sellers, I think this offense has to look a little different if you want to find success. Because you'd like to see them use their weapons a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what he had to say, and we'll talk about that coming up tomorrow. Speaking of quarterbacks, we just talked about in the last segment there, obviously Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt came in here and took the streak back from South Carolina, winning against Carolina for the first time since 2008. And I think a lot of people said, glad it's the last time we have to deal with that guy. Maybe not so fast. According to his lawyer yesterday, this is reporting by Pete Nakos, they are pursuing a 7th year of eligibility. Now, Diego Pavia on Twitter would go on to say, no, this is my last year, but take that with a grain of salt because his legal team is at least looking in to a case of where they can potentially get him a 7th year of eligibility. And you know what? If I'm Diego Pavia, I'd do it too. I'd look for an 8th year, 9th year, 10th year. I don't blame the guy.
No, I don't blame him either, Tyler. You might as well use your resources while you got him. Apparently his lawyer's pretty good, I guess, based on him getting this, 6th year of eligibility. So you might as well milk the cow for what it's worth, if you will. Yeah,
and it's one of those things. I know you see the Twitter replies to this, and people are like, man, go get a job and, go out into the real world. But here's the thing. It says in the article by Pete Nakos, Diego Pavia is making about a little more than $2 million this year to play quarterback at Vanderbilt. He got offered even more money to transfer other places, apparently. Like, Diego Pavia does not have the prospects to go play at the next level. I don't think he's going to be an NFL quarterback. Maybe he'll get a camp invite, but I don't see him as a guy that hangs around a long time in the next league. And even if he plays in Canada or he plays in the UFL or whatever it may be, his earning potential in those leagues is nowhere near what it is right now at Vanderbilt playing in the SEC. If I'm him, I want to play for as long as possible and make as much money as I can because my opportunity to make that much money playing football is probably going to never be the same once I'm done with college.
Yeah, most definitely. He's still going to get opportunities and based on, his football days for sure, but nothing will be ever as lucrative for Diego Pavia unless he, hits the Powerball or something.
Yeah.
Which, he's technically doing in this, run of life with, right? From what he came from and everything, everywhere he's worked to get to where he is, he's basically running on a lottery ticket right now, which is why, his lawyers, again, trying to get that 7th year of eligibility. And, from what we know, based on what's happened already, he's got a pretty good lawyer. Again, being able to get to where he's at already, it's pretty impressive. And again, it'll be interesting to see where this decision goes. I wouldn't think, it's going to lean in favor of Pavia, but if it does, it sets a whole new precedent in college football of these guys sticking around for longer. Like, Pavia's my age, Tyler, our age, essentially.
I know. He's been around for a long time. I guess he and Doty would have started college maybe about the same time.
Right.
Maybe a year difference there. I can't remember when Diego Pavia, played those years it was a military school out there in New Mexico.
Right.
But that's not what counts against that's what the case was stemmed off of, not counting against his eligibility. And same thing with Faison with his years in JUCO as well. But yeah, maybe we haven't indeed seen the last of Diego Pavia just yet. As hey, if you're Vanderbilt, you hang on to him as long as you can, because I think a lot of your window of success right now is built on that guy being your quarterback. And if he, runs out of eligibility and leaves, then I can't guarantee the guy behind him or whoever you bring in to replace him is going to have that same kind of spark for your team that he's had for these past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd have to be, really, really dialed in with recruiting if you're Clark Lee. And, it's going to be hard to replace in the transfer portal. But who knows? Maybe, it's just the nature of the position rather than the guy, too. They could find that, right? Being the quarterback at Vanderbilt, could just spark, some insane confidence and be like, nope, let me change this. Haven't seen it before, Diego, besides Jay Cutler and whatnot, but, we'll have to see what the next guy holds. And, I think if you're Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt, you want him to stick around as long as possible because he's the guy that gives you, the most juice and the most, energy in your program.
I've theorized, now we're to the point where we're not counting junior college eligibility. I think we're not far away from FCS eligibility and then G5 eligibility not being like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't have the same earning potential at a G5, so I need to get extra years. Like, you may look at me crazy, but I think it's coming.
Right, I'm with you, Tyler. I mean, I think if there's a case to be made, they're making it because of the earning potential. Like, it's gonna happen. These courts are gonna side with these kids, and the fact that G5, teams that were on the same playing field, they're less than a decade ago, is different football. Like, that's crazy. But again, Tyler, I'm with you. I think it's common.
We'll see what happens. Again, that's more off-season conversation because there's still a lot of football to be left to be played. But yeah, Diego Pavia may be hanging around for even a little bit more longer here in college football. Joe, we appreciate you hanging out today, and we'll have 3 more hours tomorrow and really kind of start diving into what I think is going to be an even more fun weekend of college football. Get a lot more conference games, the non-conference stuff starting to filter out a little bit, and maybe we start to kind of figure out more things about these teams that we're not quite sure about in college football.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Thanks for having me as always. And yeah, it's a good weekend to sit on the couch and, excited to break it all down as the Gamecocks head up to Como.
Certainly looking forward to that, which we will do coming up tomorrow. Again, Terry Ford going to jump in here for the last hour of the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina alongside Captain Dave as your Wednesday rolls along here on The Game.
Well, halftime show will cook the final hour. Terry Ford, David Ayer. Tyler is bounced out. Listen to Mike Shula audio from the presser. We'll get you some Mike Shula stuff this afternoon. If not, here on the last hour of on the halftime show, we'll pop the post-game show. Jay and I will have some Mike Shula, Clayton White sound from the coordinators. We'll have that coming up. So, Dave, I've gotten into these mints, man. I'm getting ready to go on the air. I realize I still got this bleeping mint in my mouth.
You know you're not supposed to do that.
I know. It's so not what you're supposed to do, right? So I got the thing stuck in my side of my gum. I might not be able to get it out later.
Just reach in there and pull it out. It's going to be on camera.
Yeah, I'll keep it on camera. So I look like I'm picking my nose or my face or something. Because, since we've been doing this about, over a year and a half now with this video. And you know what's funny? I don't know about you. You forget about it, but you don't forget about it.
You do.
Does that make sense?
You forget about it after and then you do something stupid.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And then you remember.
What was it the other day? Something happened. I was getting ready to do something. I said, video. Can't do that. Got to do that out of the room. So, yeah. So you forget about it, but you don't forget about it. You're right, though. You'll do something and go, oh, God, I'm on video, right?
Oh, man.
So we are rolling until 3. Then Jay and I will kick the post-game show. Couple things. Shane Beamer from yesterday, and Dave, if just in case someone didn't hear it, get the cut where he talked about running Lenora Sellers. Was it cut 1 from yesterday?
Yes.
All right. So Shane yesterday, if you missed it in his presser, and we've played it multiple times here on the station, Shane basically was answering a question for our buddy Jack Veltri here on the Extra Point with Tyler during the week. And obviously, the job that pays him a lot more than us, Gamecock Central. And Jack asked a question about Lenore Sellers running the ball. And, about the fact is that, it looks like he's not running the ball as much as last year. And he hasn't been a weapon in the run game. And he hasn't affected opposing defenses with his legs and all that stuff. And Jack basically asked a question about it. And Shane answered it. And we're going to play it here in a second. And it goes to the point we're going to make about the offense in general, and especially the run game. And we're going to play it momentarily in case you've missed it. And we're going to talk about, because Tyler and Elijah have done a nice job today kind of breaking down how much South Carolina has put Lenore Sellers in position to run the ball or make choices if he should run the ball or hand it off to someone else, or should he run, should he throw, whatever the case. They did a really good job giving those numbers out today, so I didn't have to look it up. I was like, thank God for these guys. And basically, South Carolina is running plays where Lenore Sellers can take off and run, whether it's RPO, option, whatever. About 10% less if you use, the analytic information that's out there, whether it's SEC StatCat, whether it's Pro Football Focus, wherever the case, pulling numbers, and from what they dug into, probably about 10% less than Lenore's ran last year, these type of plays. Now, again, your first thought is, why are you running less of these in general? But it's about 10%. That's not like, wow, oh my God, but it is less. But it's not like, stunning in the amount. Because Shane said they were not running him any less, and in theory, Shane's correct. It's only a 10% difference, but they're not running him more. And here's Shane Beamer's comments toward this whole thing about the perception of media, fans, whoever, that South Carolina is not running Lenore Sellers or does not want to run Lenore Sellers like they did last year. Hit it, Dave.
As far as the pocket, I think he's done well. I think we the South Carolina State game. I think I mentioned it last week, where there's a third down that we throw to Mike Smith, and he does a great job stepping up in the pocket and making throws. We've the protection was good the other night. Again, we had 2 sacks, and one of those was because another position missed an assignment, and the other one was because we had a bad snap that Lenoris had to fall on it. Other than that, the protection was good and the pockets were good. I don't know what conspiracy theories are out there, but I've never said, and no one in this building has ever said, we need to run the quarterback less. Like, I hear all this crap about they're not running the quarterback enough. We're calling the same goddamn plays we called last year, guys, and we're not saying we need to run Lenoris less. I'm not getting on you, Jack. I know there's like this conspiracy theory going back to the bowl game that we see it don't run Lenoris as much. We're running Lenoris plenty, and some of those are reads where Lenoris can hand it or pull it and keep it. Some of those are RPOs where he can run it or throw it. And there's some of those are called design runs that he runs. And I would say every week we want to do what we need to do to win the football game. We ran him the other night. We ran him against Virginia Tech. We ran him against South Carolina and South Carolina State. And teams aren't dumb either. In our mind, last week, we wanted to get the ball out of the Vanderbilt quarterback's hands on some of those zone reads. And these teams we play, they have good coaches, and a lot of them are going to say, don't let 16 carry the ball, because we've seen what happens when he carries the ball too. So we're doing what we got to do to win football games each week, and if that means running Lenoris, then we're going to run Lenoris. Or Luke, or Air, or Cutter, or Jimmy Francis, or Brandon Cunningham, or whoever we got in there playing quarterback.
All right, so basically there's Shane saying, guys, we're not telling the North Sellers not to run. Mike Shule is not telling the Norris Sellers not to run. I'm not telling Mike Shule to tell the Norris Sellers not to run. And looking at the numbers, yeah, they're running him less this year if you look at the information that's available to goofs like us. But it's not a crazy amount less, if that makes sense. Now, when Shane said something, and we talked about this yesterday, that, defenses, look, defensive coordinators, your job, you get paid a lot of money as defensive coordinator to stop the other team. And so if you're playing South Carolina, I'm thinking you don't want Lenoris Sellers running up and down the field on you like you did against LSU or Texas A&M or Clemson. So you're going to do things defensively to force Lenoris Sellers to not to be able to get out and run with a lot of green grass in front of him, and 2, make him give the ball up to others who you don't think are of the playmaking ability of Lenoris Sellers. I mean, just is kind of the way it is. So opposing defenses are doing things to stop him, whether it's, like Ryan Brewer said yesterday, when defenders are rushing Lenoris, stay in your lanes. Don't get out of your lane. Don't get out of your rush lane. We want to contain him. We don't want to give him space to get out of here and take off for 25 or 30. Remember those guys at Texas A&M, those pass rushers, they thought they had a sack. They missed him. They looked up, and Lenoris was 15 yards downfield, and it was a first down. Teams are trying to stop that from happening. Or Clemson, we saw what happened there with the game-winning touchdown run. So defenses are being more, they're staying in their lanes more, being more disciplined not to give Lenoris that space to run when they're rushing the passer. And they're also, whether it's spies or whatever a team's doing defensively, they're trying to get the ball out of Lenoris Sellers' hands. Like, they'd rather have Lenoris Sellers hand off to Rasul Faison, nothing against Rasul Faison, or Oscar Attaway or any of the other backs, or get the ball out of his hands and throw it to one of the receivers, because they don't fear any of those cats the way they fear 16. And, again, now you got to counter. You got to figure it out. What do? Do you run that bootleg that worked so well in the Virginia Tech game and in the Vanderbilt game? Do you start incorporating that more in your offense? More rollouts in general, maybe sliding, moving the pocket to get Lenoris out in some more space. Do you do that? Do you do more design runs? That way you're putting together the blocking schemes to get him open space. And you're not just relying on him to get away from spies or disciplined pass rushers, but you're setting up plays designed, if they are executed correctly, to get Lenoris Sellers you know, on the edges, or just give him room to run the football and to be dangerous. I don't know. I'm not the play designer or the play caller or the coordinator. I'm just a goober on the radio. But you've got to have a plan B. Really, and the other plan B is kind of really simple. The guys the other defense isn't scared of, like they're scared of Linares, these guys have to make the other team scared of them. Whether it's Razul Faison, Oscar Attaway, Fuller, Howell, the other running backs, the receiving core like Nick Harbor, Mazio Bennett, who kind of disappeared for most of the season. Any of these freshman wide receivers like Donovan Murphy or Brian Rowe or the tight ends. Other guys have got to step up and become dangerous. Nick Harbor's getting a little bit of that. We were yipping about this upstairs. I think it was Elijah and I. About on the broadcast, Cole Kubelik was talking to, our boy Coach Lee at Vandy. And, Cole was discussing how they didn't want Harbor to beat them deep. They want to take away Nick's speed by, bracketing him, rolling coverage toward him, whatever it is. But then again, if that's happening, then it's like anything. If a team is taking a defender to basically, for lack of a better term, double another guy, that's leaving space for you to be able to do something else because now they're weaker somewhere else because they're taking a guy that would be in a certain spot and they're moving him to account for Nick Harbor, right? So now you have put a weakness into the defense, or Harbor's put a weakness into the defense because of his speed and that 64-yard touchdown against Virginia Tech and the way Nick has looked like he's really improved as a receiver. Now, if defense is starting to account for his speed, that's leaving them weak in another area you've got to attack. Whether it's if you're just running Nick down the field, man, to be a decoy or to just clear out an area, and they're going to run two guys with him, area's clean for somebody to go in there and be open. So that all this stuff is there, and there's more stuff because smarter people than I can figure all this out. But you got to have a counterpunch. There's got to be a plan B here. It's got to be a plan B. But, to Shane, and what Shane said, really they haven't, decreased the number of possible running plays from last year. Like I said, 10%. That's not a whole lot if you go look at the numbers. It's about the same. But again, we're watching with our eyes. Linares Sellers is not affecting the game the way he did last year. And part of it is the way defenses are playing him, to be fair. So now you got to counter that. You got to figure that out. Because it's there. You just got to figure it out. But very interesting stuff from Elijah and from Tyler breaking all that stuff down today and going over the numbers after Shane brought it up yesterday. So, all right, no news yet on Linares Sellers in the injury situation. We don't know. We'll find out more tomorrow night. Obviously, the line went down, and Jay Phillips tweeted this out. Our Vegas insider, Jay Phillips, tweeted this out, that the line has dropped a few points on a Tuesday. Do the Vegas people know something we don't? I don't know. But the line went up a lot when it first was dropped, and part of that obviously is, the starting quarterback's hurt. Now the line's coming back down. What does that mean? Does that mean that maybe Vegas people know something we don't know, or Vegas people are thinking that Sellers could play? I don't know. I'm just saying that's a thing. When you're trying to look at all this stuff, you look at the Vegas line. All of a sudden, if the Vegas line is going back down, could that mean something? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. We don't know anything about Linares Sellers yet, if he's going to be playing or not. And obviously, if Linares Sellers is playing, you got a much better chance to win in Columbia, Missouri than if Linares Sellers doesn't play. I will come back. There's been some stuff floating around about what's going on offensively at South Carolina. We're going to get to that next here on the Halftime Show on The Game. Hanging out here doing the halftime show, talking some Gamecocks. We'll have some Mike Shula sound from the offensive coordinator's presser. Tyler did a heck of a job cutting that up, so we have some Mike Shula coming up here. Try to get someone here before 3 o'clock. Definitely have it between 3 and 6 on the postgame show with Jay and myself. David Ayers here as we, what do you got? Huh? I heard you. What? What? What?
I said it's ready.
Is it ready? We'll have to. Well, if you've got it ready, we're going to have to play it. But when I call for it, you say it's ready, right?
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work, then it would be your fault. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Because that machine never screws up.
Never.
Never. You think that's this millennium or last millennium?
Millennium?
That machine.
Oh, no, I think it's a 98 model running Windows XP.
Are we supposed to be pretending like everything we have is just like state of the art? We're a network now. We should be acting like we're like big time.
Well, some of it is. I mean,
it is. The video stuff's fantastic.
It's beautiful.
Anyway, why'd you get me started? I blame you, Dave. All right. A couple of posts were put up recently. Well, a big spur. Tony Morrell, who is a guy who has a very good reputation and is a very well-connected guy and is not, sliced bread or someone like that. And because someone with a really good reputation puts something out that he hears, I think it's something that needs to be addressed. Now, again, if it's sliced bread, we don't talk about it, really. We talked about sliced bread because it was funny. Because, Jimbo went nuts. And Jimbo brought up sliced bread, so he brought the whole thing in. But when you get someone like Tony Morrell, who's got a good reputation, and is well-respected, and does know folks, and he puts out some stuff, you want to address it. Because I think you should. And Tony had a couple of posts. One, and he talks about the week of the opener against Virginia Tech, a source inside the South Carolina program told Tony the most significant concern surrounding the first game and the season as a whole was how nervous and anxious offensive coordinator Mike Shula seemed. And Tony goes on to say, it doesn't kind of make sense. You got a guy here who's been in the NFL for 30 years, head coach at Alabama, was the OC in Carolina when Cam Newton had that MVP season. The Panthers went to the Super Bowl, got beat by Denver. Guy also was the OC for the Giants for a couple years. And Tony's like, with that resume, how could Shula be nervous about calling plays for South Carolina? And then Tony goes on to say, a few weeks into the year, the concern makes more sense, it seems. According to what Tony's been told, the offense, the performance so far of the offense has only deepened Shula's anxiety and his confidence has waned. And Tony goes through also to say, if this continues, something has to probably be done. He even says head coach Shane Beamer has always leaned on a stay-the-course philosophy, and at times that steadiness has served him well. But internally, there seems to be a genuine concern that this offense is not on a trajectory toward meaningful improvement. And I'll say this. Shane, yes, he has leaned on a stay-the-course philosophy, but to be fair, when it's time to have the come to Jesus, he's had the come to Jesus. He did it with Marcus Satterfield after the Florida game a few years ago. After that horrid performance in the swamp, Shane had to sit down with Marcus Satterfield. Let's streamline this thing, man. Streamline that Denny's menu, brother. Take the filet mignon and the salmon off. Let's stick with the Denny's special, the moon's over my hammy, the breakfast skillets. So stick with that. The omelets. Let's not get crazy anymore. And the offense obviously went on a heck of a heater against Tennessee and Clemson to end the year with those 2 upset victories. A couple years ago, for some reason, Florida comes up all the time. Florida here in Williams-Brice lit up Clayton White's defense. That defense was struggling and scuffling, giving up big plays, not getting pass rush. Had a lot of trouble covering slot receivers. Shane had to sit down with Clayton White. Clayton, I love you. We got to talk. So Clayton came out running a 3-3-5. All of a sudden, more blitzing, more heat on quarterbacks. And since then, for the most part, that defense has been really good. We're looking at over a year now of excellent to good to solid play defensively. So Shane does that. And to his credit, by the way, you might say he waits too long. All right, that's fine. That's a judgment you can make just from a 30,000-foot view. But Shane does, when he feels like it's time, opens up the coordinator's door and says, "Hi, how you doing? I got this guy with long hair and sandals and a robe, and we got to sit down and us three talk." And he has done it, and it's been success. In my time here, he's 2 for 2 in that situation. So he will do it, and I think if this thing is what we're reading here, or in any way, shape, or form, something becomes a concern to where it could affect the season as a whole, I think Shane will have that conversation. I think he's comfortable with that. Some head coaches won't do it, which is just mind-numbing to me. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for wins and losses, and your job's on the line if things aren't going well. And if you don't like the way the offense is being, the play calling or the system, the scheme, or the defense for that matter, either side of the ball, hell, the special teams. The buck stops with you, and I don't care if you weren't an offensive coordinator, you weren't a defensive coordinator, you weren't a special teams coordinator. If you think one of your units is not performing the way you think it should, you go and, for an example, go to Clayton. Look, Clayton, I've never coordinated defense in my life, but this ain't working, bro. Come up with something. See me in my office in a day or two with a new plan. We need something different. You're the defensive coordinator. I hired you to do a job. You come to me with something new, but I just know me as the CEO of this football team, this isn't the way I want it to be. And same thing with Marcus Satterfield. So, Shane, I believe if this becomes a thing, I think that would be handled. Because, again, you don't want your season to go sideways. So, but very interesting post. Another post we're going to get to in the next segment that Tony also put up about, it says, a view from outside the program. It's intel from a non-Gamecock college coaching source who recently scouted South Carolina's first 3 games. Some of this stuff is interesting. We got that Mike Shula sound coming up next. David Ayers here. It's Terry Ford. We are finishing up the last hour of the halftime show. We go till 3. Then Jay and I will kick the postgame show right here on The Game in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach, and Charleston. All right, we'll be starting to give away some cash, or possibly your chance to win cash as our national cash contest. So, grabbing some dough starts tomorrow. We'll have keywords through the day. We'll let you know when they're coming up. You hear the keyword, we'll tell you where to text it to, and then good luck. You can win some cash, win some dough. We do it 5 times a day. I think it's $1,000 every pop. And that is starting tomorrow's Thursday, right, Dave?
Yeah, although today seems like Thursday, but
Don't confuse me, Dave. You know, it's easy.
what year is it?
Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow's Thursday, then it's Friday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it starts tomorrow. Your chance to snag some cash here with our national contest on the game. All right. So we've been talking about a couple of posts from Tony Morrell at the Big Spur. And again, Tony, very well respected, very connected. And our job here is to give you information and then comment on information. And Tony got some feedback from a college coaching contact who recently scouted South Carolina's squad based on the first 3 games. And some of the stuff we've been talking about this week, Tony, this college coaching contact brings up to Tony saying, it's apparent that opposing defenses are doing everything they can to force quarterback Lenore Sellers to hand the ball off when the Gamecocks run zone read. Because right now there isn't much fear of the running backs because South Carolina doesn't have a player like Rocket Sanders, someone who can run through contact consistently and still pick up 5 yards or more. Now, to be fair, Rasul Faison, I think, is a good back. And I think as time goes on and Faison gets more comfortable and gets in a rhythm, I don't know if he's going to be Rocket Sanders, but I think Faison's a good back. According to this source, Oscar Attaway lacks SEC-level speed, while Faison is more effective in space rather than trying to grind out tough yards between the tackles. And this coaching contact suggested to Tony maybe the staff should consider using some of the other backs like Howell or Fuller as well, who might be better suited to maybe pick up some more yak yards between the tackles. This source, who is familiar with Sean Elliott's run game philosophy, noted that the current approach to the run bears no resemblance to what Elliott implemented during his first stint at South Carolina or during his time as head coach at Georgia State. Basically, this is not yes, Elliott's a run game coordinator, but according to this coaching source, this does not look like the run games that Sean Elliott has implemented in the past. What does that mean? Does it mean that Sean Elliott's not using the run game he'd like to? Or is this the run game he incorporated to what he thinks needs to be used at this point in time? I don't know, but this coaching contact of Tony says this is not a Sean Elliott-looking run game. Coaching contact said when it comes to the offensive line, the left side, trouble. The left side of the line, according to this coaching source, said the line on the left side has been as poor as any group as he's scouted this year. Left guard play is not good enough, and Josiah Thompson, in this coaching contact's mind, this source's mind, has regressed from year 1 to 2, and even this contact says something that is difficult to explain his regression. Right side, more respectable, where Kason Henry and Trevon Ball have been playing, and those guys have, again, they've been solid this year. As for Sellers, defenses are intent on forcing him to throw the football, according to this source. Opponents do not fear him nearly as much as a passer, nor are they worried about South Carolina's current group of wide receivers. Defenses are positioning players to contain his scrambling, much like Illinois did in last year's Citrus Bowl. And to this point, South Carolina has not shown an effective counterpunch to that strategy. So that is again, this is a college coaching contact of Tony Morrell's giving his opinion on the South Carolina offense after scouting the first 3 games. That's one person's opinion. Just want to get it out to you. But what you hear, there are 2 things that stick out, is the idea that, yes, teams are obviously scheming to get the ball out of Sellers' hands. And look, Lenore Sellers can throw the football. But at this point, opposing defenses are saying, look, man, we'd rather take a shot at stopping you as a passer because we sure don't want to let you get out there and be a runner. We'd rather deal with you throwing the football than running the football. That's just, according to the source, is what he's seeing. And right now, look, the receiver room, Nick Harbor, I mean, I don't think you need to be a genius to say, boy, Nick's improved. We see him getting open more. We see him, when the ball's thrown to him, he's become more of a natural catcher of the ball. He's had one drop, I think, this year. But he's improved. And like we said, during the SEC broadcast of the South Carolina Vanderbilt game, they were talking about how Clark Lee was concerned about Harbor down the field. And they were bracketing coverages, rolling coverages toward Harbor. So Nick is improving. But right now, the rest of the core, you got freshmen. Look, I like Donovan Murphy. I like Brian Rowe. I like them both a lot. I think they both are going to be able to be a productive wide receivers. But look, they're freshmen. Donovan Murphy should still be in high school, matter of fact. At some point in time, I think those guys can really be helpful. But right now, they're freshmen. The tight ends, I think we saw Dingle with the catch and run for 33 yards on that bootleg on the first play from scrimmage last week. I think there's something there with him. Brady Hunt is a solid player, not like a dynamic game breaker, but again, he's a solid guy. Michael Smith's a guy with all the ability in the world, but for some reason this year, it feels like, he started as a freshman last year. So what's going on with Smith? Is it a practice thing? Because, again, Shane believes in competition. Is it just Dingle and Hunt have been better? Could be that simple. But right now, none of these guys is consistently scary enough or explosive enough or electric enough to make opposing defenses change their mind of this whole idea of get the ball out of number 16's hands. Because we're not scared of anybody else on that offense but that dude when he takes off. That's kind of what I'm reading from this. So another thing that has to happen is guys have to start making plays. You got to start being dangerous to where teams don't feel this way that this coaching source says. He feels like by watching tape and talking to other people. You got to get dangerous, man. Because you start getting dangerous, then teams just can't overload on 16. It's another way to help out. And the whole thing about the running game is also makes me give the old eyebrow. The eyebrow you do that goes up when you're going, Do the eyebrow in the video. That didn't work at all. About the whole idea that this is not the run game that typically you see a Sean Elliott team run. That's interesting. And the Josiah Thompson thing, is Thompson just not 100%? Because there's been talk about that he has been dealing with some nagging injury stuff. But Josiah Thompson, I thought was going to make a real leap in year 2. Sort of like Caden Proctor did at Alabama, who was also a 5-star left tackle recruit out of high school who started right away, like Josiah Thompson did. Still plenty of year left for Thompson to kick it into gear, but, it's early. But my wonder is he still nicked up from whatever lingering injury stuff that he had? I don't know. So those are 3 things I take from that post. That, if teams are going to overload to stop Lenore Sellers, someone else has got to make them pay. And your offensive brain trust has got to come up with a counterpunch. You just can't throw your hands up and go, well, they're stopping the quarterback. What are we going to do? So that's what I got from this. And that this is not a Sean Elliott type run game in philosophy. And Josiah Thompson, we're watching it ourselves, but then you hear someone from the coaching world who scouted the offense says Thompson's regressed a bit. I'll get some Mike Shula in here, Dave. Be ready. We're going to come back here, get Mike Shula's thoughts on Lenore Sellers, the plays, the offense. We're going to have that coming up next. Mike Shula spoke to the media today. We'll get that coming up in the next segment. We're going to do something fun here Saturday. All right, so bear with me real quick. We have got, on Saturday, obviously, we start Gamecocks Game Day, our local pregame show. 2 o'clock, we'll be at O'Hara's Main Street in Lexington. Do our 2-hour pregame. Network pregame with Chris Miller and the crew pops at 4. Then Todd and Tommy on the call at 7 in Columbia, Missouri. And we have a viewing party at O'Hara's if you want to come out. You're looking for a place to come out and watch the game, please come to O'Hara's and hang out there. You can register to win South Carolina Clemson tickets for the game at Williams-Brice in late November. Also, though, if you're not going out, if you're just hanging around the house or you're just watching the game in some way, shape, or form or keeping up with the game, our buddy Elijah Campbell is going to host a nice little hang on our YouTube channel while Elijah's watching the game. He'll comment on it, give you his opinion, his thoughts. Feel free to join in with your opinion and your thoughts. It'll be a little fun. You can hang out and watch the game with Elijah Campbell. That'll be happening on our YouTube channel at The Game Radio TV. So that's all happening Saturday. You got our pregame. You can listen to the game on the radio here. You can come watch it with us at O'Hara's. You can hang out and watch it with Elijah on our YouTube channel. You can go to Dave's house. We got Dave's address. And Dave will be here working, but he'll leave the door unlocked. You can go to his house and watch the game in his living room and eat all of his food. You down with that, Dave?
Somebody please steal that stale bread that's on my counter.
the bread that's turned green?
Yeah.
With the freshness date of October of 2020?
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy at the moment, but...
Oh, so Mike Shula sound from the Gamecock offensive coordinator next. Halftime show, Terry Ford, David Dare. We go till 3, and then Jay and I will kick the postgame show till 6 here on the game. All righty, we were rolling the halftime show. Terry Ford just kicking through the last hour before we get to the post-game show with Jay and myself. You know, I hear that opening, and it's Bill Gunter and Tyler Head and David Dare, and only one of you are here.
Yep.
And it's you, sir.
What a shock.
The old guy.
Huh.
The only one here. Just saying. In all seriousness, Bill, all the hope is that Bill will be back on Monday to hang out with Dave and Tyler and get, appreciate Tyler doing extra work, appreciate our buddy Joe Machika, appreciate our pal Scott Hamilton and everyone filling in as Bill has been out with some health stuff. But the hope is that Bill will be back in here on Monday and ready to rock and roll again with you here on the halftime show with Tyler and Dave. I'll get to some Mike Shula sound in a second. Real quick, though, Will Helms does phenomenal work with the analytics on Gamecock Central. And Will put his post up about the analytics. The good and the bad and the pretty and the ugly from Saturday and for the season so far. And this stuck out first, then we'll obviously get to the negative part, because there was obviously negative. The good news, in the first quarter, up until Lenore Sellers got hurt, South Carolina's offensive success rate was 75%. Basically, you have to gain X amount of yards on each down for it to be a successful play. South Carolina basically was successful on 75% of their plays, gaining that down, gaining those yards. Like 5 yards on first down, for an example. That's a success. 75% of the time. How good is that? Well, Will goes back to that big win over Tennessee in 2022 when South Carolina hung 63 on the Vols. The highest single quarter success rate in that game, 67%. That's how good the South Carolina offense was regarding success rate before Sellers got hurt. That offense was moving the rock. The shame of it was Lenore Sellers got hurt. In that game, when Sellers was playing, South Carolina had 6 chunk plays, which are runs of 10-plus yards or passes of 15-plus yards. 6 chunk plays, 3 explosive plays. That's runs of 15-plus or passes of 25-plus. So the offense was humming. After Sellers went down, 5 chunk plays, 0 explosives, and only two chunk plays outside of garbage time. That's the effect of losing Sellers in that game Saturday. Now, I'm not saying South Carolina would have won if Lenore Sellers would have been playing, because I don't know. But I'm just giving you, that's the effect of what happened before Sellers and after Sellers. And one of the problems with South Carolina is finishing drives. That's been a huge problem this year. Basically, South Carolina got to the Vanderbilt 40 60 times, scored 7 points. Vanderbilt reached the South Carolina 45 times, scoring 24 points. Need I say more? Finishing drives has been a problem. So that's Will Helms with some analytics stuff. It's just really good stuff from Will Helms. All right, Mike Shula, the offensive coordinator, talking to the media. Let's start with that injury report, Dave. But that should just do it.
It's the Samuels Reynolds Law Firm Injury Report. When you're hurt at work or in an accident anywhere in South Carolina, Samuels Reynolds goes to work for you. The Samuels Reynolds Law Firm. True injuries, true lawyers. Call 779-4000.
All right, here's Mike Shula, obviously not giving you the complete injury details on Lenore Sellers. We'll hear that tomorrow night, or tonight rather, when the official participation list comes out for the SEC from South Carolina. But here, Mike Shula was asked at Lenore's practice today, which you're hoping will give you some insight on how Lenore's is doing. And here's Mike Shula's answer.
I think Coach Beamer probably has talked about all that. I think he's got all those answers.
Spoken like a true offensive coordinator. Basically, Mike Shula's like, I ain't saying nothing. Let the head coach talk about it. All right, here's Mike Shula, though, talking about running the same plays in a football game. Here's what Mike Shula said today about that conversation that a lot of folks have been having.
Yeah, I would say there's a, when you offensively, there's a lot of, you work in the offseason or training camp, things like that, to have kind of a core set of plays, running game-wise, passing game-wise, whether or not it's whoever's running the ball, running backs, quarterbacks, whatever, and then you try to build off that with variations. And I think, all through my career and in every offense I've been in, I think offenses have that. You have a base and a foundation, and then you have, variations off that, whether or not it's a similar run with a different add-on, so to speak, or same exact run with a different formation, or same run with the same formation.
So, yeah, I mean, you kind of have your base of the plays you like, the plays you think will work, or the plays that are working, that are successful, and you build off of those. You build little things off of it. And I guess as the season goes along, once you see plays that are being more successful, you would add them to your like list or your favorites or whatever you want to call it, or your base plays. And then you build off of that. Maybe we'll get that bootleg in there, Dave. That bootleg we like so much, it's worked so well. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe that'll be part of a bigger package of plays with usage, because that play it's been pretty nice so far, and then it disappears after the scripted stuff. All right, that's it, halftime show. Thanks for hanging, Dave. Good work. Jay and I will kick the post-game show next here on The Game in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach, and Charleston.